chat. Please give me a thumbs up, and I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the wrench. Do I see any volunteers that want to help me keep the NPCs out of the chat? Who wants to keep the NPCs out of the chat? Who wants to have the wrench and the power thereby to remove or block anyone? Let's see. Do we have anybody saying, I want to be a moderator? Any hands? No? Okay. Brian, you want to be a moderator? Brian Baria wants to be a moderator. Who else wants to be a moderator? Karina, when I am here, sure. Karina wants to be a moderator. Who else wants to be? Oh, Wade Woodruff. All right, Wade Woodruff. Because I did meet you at one of my events last year. I remember you, Wade. What's up, Wade? I'm going to go ahead and give you the power of the wrench. So I'm going to add you as a moderator. And all right, let's do it. So Wade Woodruff, you have been selected to become a moderator. So thank you so much, Wade. And now we have Wade Woodruff with the power of the wrench. We have Wolf Mother and, of course, Starcadian. So now that I have 3 moderators, because those NPCs and those trolls are coming in left and right? They don't want the truth to be told. So make sure you guys use that power for good, okay? Only block the NPCs and the trolls. All right, so before I get started with this deep esoteric knowledge, and you guys are going to love it because I'm also going to be explaining this from a quantum physics perspective. So we're going to go deep once again tonight. But before I do, there are a few announcements. The first one is I have 4 courses up for grab. Our Cosmic Origin, my groundbreaking course, and of course 3 different level ascension courses, and they're only $100. And those are accessible through my website. And I believe they start in about 3 weeks, I believe. And in addition to that, I also wanted to remind you guys, but before I even mention it, I do want to say disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. However, I do believe in the detox protocol of eliminating all those nanobots and those metals, and of course, the negative radiation from your body so that the natural healing process can take effect. So for those of you guys that are interested in getting rid of all those nanobots, because that's what they are, they're nanobots, please get your Folium. The link is always in the description, and then I also pin it at the end of the presentation. All right, so, as mentioned before, not only am I going to be speaking in Tucson, Arizona, on the 20th of June, coming up in about, I guess, less than 2 weeks, but I'm also going to be holding a free event here in Sedona. It's going to be a CE5 event where I'm going to have a bunch of people here so that we could try to make contact with the Galactic Alliance, and we'll see if they land. Now, this event is free. However, you will be responsible to bring your own chair so you can recline it and look up at the sky as we, of course, call in the ships. So please bring your chair. And the event will be held on the 18th of July at the Oak Creeks Country Club. Okay, that's where the event's going to be. It's a free event. I'm not going to charge. However, if you do come, just know that the event is just for 2 hours. So it's your responsibility to have a place to sleep at night for those of you guys that are coming from other states or from other countries. So I'm not responsible for that. If you do make it, make sure that you guys have a place to sleep at night, okay? All right, anything else? Yes, MUFON on the 20th in Tucson, Arizona. I will be speaking from 12 to 2 at the MUFON Center. And then any other announcements? Yes, I'm also going to be a speaker at the upcoming Mount Shasta Conference, which, of course, used to belong to Rob Potter, but now it's being continued through other people. So I'm going to be there in person. And that's going to be, I believe, the 24th, 25th, and 26th of August. I'm not quite sure, but what I'll do is at the end of the live, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the link to the website. And of course, if you do get tickets, make sure you guys go through my link so that I can get credit for that. Any other announcements? Let's see. No, I think that is it. All right. Now we can get right into it. So, all right. What does it mean when a lot of the ancient books talk about the true meaning of the kingdom of heaven, which is what we would equate to a fifth dimensional earth reality, right? Which is what we call the golden age. Well, what if I tell you guys that this new earth isn't far off away? Okay, it's always been here. It's just that people haven't been able to see it or experience it. So what we do know, according to the secret knowledge, is that throughout all of history, the mystics, the sages, the spiritual initiates have always described the kingdom of heaven as a realm that exists beyond ordinary perception. Yet, they also consistently taught that the kingdom is not a faraway thing. It is not a location, right, at the edge of the universe, nor is it separated from humanity by physical distance. Isn't that what we read in the book of Thomas? Well, there is more, okay? Rather, the mystics and the sages have always believed that the kingdom of heaven is a vibrational frequency away, okay? Not only that, but it also exists all around us, hidden in plain sight, within and around. It is here. But back then, they didn't understand quantum physics. They didn't understand superposition or the phenomena regarding how multiple states of reality could occupy the same space at the same time. So what the mystics did is they kept this mysterious teaching, even though it's always puzzled all of the seekers, but they kept it very secured within the secret records of the Brotherhood of Light. So if the kingdom of heaven is truly present here and now, as stated by the ancient mystics and the sages, why is it that most people don't perceive it? If you guys could answer that, please leave it in the comments. I want to know your perspective. Why is it that most people don't even realize that it's here? Well, according to the secret knowledge, the answer is both very simple and profound. The kingdom is not separated by distance, my friends. It is separated by vibration. You know, for centuries, humanity has searched for the kingdom of heaven. Many have imagined it to be a distant paradise awaiting the righteous after death, while others have viewed it as a divine realm existing somewhere beyond the stars. But yet the great spiritual mystics and masters of all times and all of the initiates of the ancient mystery schools, they always taught a radical different understanding. They taught that the kingdom of heaven is not a location where one reaches after death. That is another fallacy created by organized religion. But instead, it is a state of consciousness that could actually be attained while living in a physical body. Well, this explains why we could also already enter the new five-dimensional Earth reality even before the solar flash. Let me explain. Throughout history, the deepest esoteric traditions have always maintained that humanity possesses a divine spark that originated from the source of all creation. Well, the purpose of spiritual evolution is to awaken that divine essence and bring it into full expression. So only until that occurs can an individual begin to experience what the ancient masters refer to as the kingdom of heaven. This understanding transforms spirituality from a belief system into a living experience. You see, a lot of people are expecting the solar flash so that they could enter into the new golden age five-dimensional Earth reality, while very few are already living it. Think about that, Galactic Jedis. The kingdom becomes something that is embodied rather than simply hoped for. It is not even a rewarded, granted from an outside source, but it is a realization that emerges from within. You see, guys, one of the most profound statements that has been attributed to Jesus the Christ is found in the declaration that the kingdom of God is within you. Well, esoterically, this statement points to an external truth, rather, an eternal truth, not external. Let me correct myself. This statement points to an eternal truth, which is that the doorway to heaven exists within human consciousness itself. Think about that for a second, Galactic Jedis. The kingdom is not hidden in distant dimensions or reserved for a selective few. Rather, it exists as a latent reality within every human being. You guys see, the ancient initiates of the ancient mystery schools, they all understood that consciousness functions as a receiver. And even though it took us thousands of years to explain that through the restoration of quantum physics, just as a radio can actually tune into different frequencies, so can human awareness also tune into different levels of reality. And so for those of you that are familiarized with the Hawkins scale of emotions, each corresponding to a particular frequency, we do know that fear, hatred, division, and even selfishness correspond to the lower frequencies of consciousness, keeping us trapped into a 3D layer of reality, while love, wisdom, compassion, and even unity correspond to a higher frequency layer of reality. So the kingdom of heaven actually represents the highest expression of human consciousness. And this is why I teach my ascension courses. Okay? It is a state in which an individual becomes aligned with divine truth, with universal love, and of course, the will of the infinite creator. When consciousness rises to this level, life itself begins to transform. One perceives reality differently than the rest. The illusion of separation dissolves immediately, and the interconnectedness of all life becomes apparent. So the ancients, the adepts, the shamans, the yogis, the mystics, the saints, they all knew one thing, and that is that heaven is a state of consciousness. To give you guys an example, the ancient mystery schools of Egypt, of Greece, of India, Tibet, and of course the Middle East, they all taught that heaven is fundamentally a state of being. And this does not mean that higher dimensions do not exist. Okay, many traditions speak of celestial realms populated by enlightened beings. However, the esoteric teachings emphasizes that access to those realms is determined by one's consciousness. So, like attracts like. We all understand that, thanks to the law of attraction. A person living in fear naturally resonates with fear-based experiences, for instance. And in like manner, a person living in love naturally resonates with realities that are aligned with love. So the kingdom of heaven is therefore a vibrational state that is ultimately characterized by having inner peace, divine wisdom, compassion, harmony, truth, gratitude, forgiveness, and above all, unity consciousness. Did I miss anything? Please leave it in the comments if I missed anything. Empathy. Did I say empathy? You have to be empathetic. All right. So if I missed anything else, put it in the comments. All of these are qualities of a divine mind that has realized the kingdom of heaven. So all of these qualities apparently become embodied. The individual begins to experience heaven internally, regardless of external circumstances. And this is why many believe within our community that the solar flash has to be first an event that happens internally. So it's first an inside job before it becomes externalized for the rest. Think about that for a quick second, guys. Okay? As anchor points, we're here, right? Activating the Christ grid. We're here, raising consciousness. We're here, being martyrs, transmuting the negative density that has been accumulated throughout the Dark Ages. Why are we doing that? In order to reach critical mass. Therefore, the enlightened masters throughout all of history, they've always demonstrated this principle, even amidst prosecutions, persecutions, hardships, and uncertainty. They've always maintained that profound connection to the divine peace because their consciousness was always anchored in the kingdom. Now, according to many secret traditions that are part of the esoteric knowledge, humanity originally existed in a state of greater spiritual awareness. So this is the original, of course, creation. And we all know that, right? And so the symbolic story of humanity's fall from Eden actually represents a descent into separation consciousness. Think about that for a second. Rather than understanding ourselves as expressions of the divine, we actually came to identify exclusively with the physical body, ego, and material world. So, in this regard, when we attain divine consciousness, and I know a lot of you guys have already, fear begins to replace, of course, trust begins to replace fear. Okay, when we realize that which we lost during the fall, cooperation then replaces competition. Unity then replaces separation. And the only reason why, as a collective, we've experienced the opposite, right? Separation, competition, and fear, well, is because we fell from unity consciousness into separated consciousness. Now, the result of all of this is when we fall into separated consciousness due to the Dark Ages, as a civilization, we become largely disconnected from our spiritual heritage. So therefore, the journey of ascension can actually be understood as the reversal of this process. And that is what is happening right now, but on a planetary scale. Ascension is the gradual return to higher states of consciousness and the remembrance of our divine origin. And so in this sense, the kingdom of heaven is not a thing that needs to be created. It is actually something ancient that must be remembered. So the path to re-entering the kingdom of heaven is not complicated, because according to the esoteric teachings, they consistently emphasize that entering the kingdom requires inner transformation, the work within, because it is believed that blind faith alone will not do it, okay? And belief alone is insufficient. And even more so, knowledge alone becomes insufficient. What is the point of having all this knowledge about spirituality but not doing the work? It makes no sense. And even at that point, external rituals alone become insufficient. Without doing the internal transformation, all of these other factors fail. So the kingdom of heaven becomes accessible through the purification and refinement of consciousness. Now, this process involves several stages. The first stage is mastery of thought. Mastery of thought. What does that mean? Take a lucky guess. For those that want to just put it in the chat, what does it mean, mastery of thought? That means that every thought generates energy, right? According to the new science. So the mind functions as a creative instrument capable of shaping personal reality. To give you guys an example, negative thought patterns create limitation. And in like manner, elevated thoughts generate coherence and harmony. So in order to enter the kingdom, all you guys have to do is learn to observe and master the mind rather than becoming controlled by it. That's what that means. First step in attaining the kingdom of heaven is mastery of thought. Now, the second step is purification of heart. The heart serves as a bridge between the human personality and the soul. So, negative emotions like resentment, anger, jealousy, and hatred, they all create energetic barriers that prevent higher consciousness from emerging. Now, on the opposite, forgiveness begins to dissolve those barriers. Compassion expands the awareness. Gratitude begins to open up the heart again to facilitate more divine flow. So as the heart becomes purified, the frequency of consciousness rises naturally. And the third element in re-entering the kingdom of heaven, according to the secret knowledge, is service to others. And this kind of ties in with the law of one teachings, right? As long as we're 51% service to others, according to the raw material, we will enter the kingdom of heaven. So the third element, besides the purification or a mastery of thought, purifying your heart, the third element is service to others. Every great spiritual tradition teaches the importance of service. The kingdom cannot be entered through selfishness because the kingdom itself operates according to the principles of unity. Therefore, service to others aligns the individual with universal principles and, of course, reveals the interconnected nature of all life. So when you begin to serve others from a genuine, loving perspective or angle, the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. And then finally, but not least, the fourth principle is living in the truth. Because truth is one of the most foundational pillars of the kingdom of heaven. Living authentically requires courage. It requires honesty, not only with yourself and integrity with yourself, but in your own actions as well. Every act aligned with truth strengthens the connection to the higher self, which is the Christ. We all have the Christ in us. It is equivalent to what we call the higher self. Every compromise with falsehood weakens it. So therefore, the kingdom flourishes wherever truth is honored. Now, in terms of Christ consciousness and the kingdom, according to the esoteric knowledge, Christ consciousness refers not to a historical figure. It actually refers to a universal state of spiritual realization. It is the awakening of divine awareness within the individual. And so this consciousness begins to recognize that all life originated from one single source. It sees beyond race, beyond religion, beyond nationality, beyond ideology. And it also understands that every being, human, plant, animal, planets, the universe, contains a spark of the divine. So the great masters of all traditions who embodied Christ consciousness, they all demonstrated this. And they demonstrated this because they knew that humanity had the potential to also realize it. They showed that the kingdom is not reserved for just a selective few, but that it actually represents humanity's ultimate evolutionary destiny and returning back to the original divine state. So, all of this, again, requires the transformation of reality. And in order to experience the transformation of reality, we have to first experience it inside of us. Because as consciousness begins to rise, reality itself begins to change. The individual no longer experiences life primarily through fear or limitation. Instead, life becomes increasingly guided by intuition, synchronicity, wisdom, and purpose. In fact, many spiritual traditions describe this process as moving from the old world into the new world. The outer environment may appear similar, yet the inner experience becomes entirely different. At this point, one begins to recognize that there is meaning behind every event, that there is divine order within apparent chaos. They also recognize opportunities that are hidden within challenges. Many of us call that blessings in disguise. And they also acknowledge the presence of the sacred within ordinary life, even the least among us. This, my friends, is the beginning of living in the kingdom. Okay? So, perhaps the greatest esoteric secret is that the purpose of spiritual evolution is to bring heaven to earth, and not to leave earth, to bring heaven to earth. And that is the true spiritual significance of the Star of David, the union of heaven and earth. Okay? The enlightened individual becomes a living bridge between higher and lower realities. And rather than waiting for a future paradise, you begin to embody those qualities of the kingdom right here and right now. And so as a result of that, your own presence will begin to uplift others. Their actions will be reflected in every divine principle, your actions. And not to mention, your lives will become examples of what humanity can become. And so, as more individuals awaken, the collective consciousness of humanity is beginning to shift. The kingdom expands because of the transformation that is taking place in your hearts. The kingdom of heaven is one of the most profound mysteries ever given to humanity. And so it is far from being a distant destination. It is a reality, a living reality, available to those willing to undergo that inner transformation. You see, guys, the ancient masters taught that heaven is a state of consciousness that was characterized by positive emotions, beginning with unconditional love, wisdom, compassion, unity, and of course, divine awareness. It is access not through external authority, neither, but through self-realization and spiritual awakening. So to live in the kingdom requires, again, mastery of thought, purification of heart, alignment with truth, authenticity, and last but not least, service to others. And then will you begin to embody higher consciousness, so that ultimately the kingdom of heaven is the realization that the divine presence has always existed within us and all around us. The journey of ascension is that process, my friends, of removing everything that obscures that truth. When humanity remembers its divine nature and lives according to these universal principles, the kingdom is no longer something that we are expecting, like the solar flash. It becomes a reality experienced in the present moment. And that is how we bring the solar flash for the collective. Okay? The kingdom of heaven is not nowhere. It is right here, guys. It is not somewhere lofty. It's not some distant place. It is what we ultimately become through the inner transformation. Now, many esoteric philosophers and mystics, they always compared the kingdom of heaven very similar to becoming a child again. The forgotten key to entering the kingdom is what? Is remembering our childlike consciousness. Think about that for a second. You see, among the various teachings that have been attributed to Jesus, few are as profound and misunderstood as the statement, unless you change and become like little children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. End of quote. That's what Jesus said in the Bible. Unless you change and become like little children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. All right, let me break that down. You see, for centuries, theologians, mystics, and spiritual teachers have pondered the deeper meaning of these words. What did Jesus mean? That in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, I have to become like a child. What does that mean? Well, on the surface, guys, the statement appears very simple, yet hidden within it is one of the most greatest spiritual secrets ever given to humanity. The instruction was not given to imitate the behavior of children. Rather, it was an invitation to recover a state of consciousness that most people lost as they moved through life and became indoctrinated. Remember at the beginning of this presentation, I was explaining how religion got it all wrong. We are not born sinners. We are born pure of mind, pure of heart. We become corrupted through indoctrination. It's the other way around. So the child, all right, this is a metaphor. The child represents a condition of pure awareness before even the mind becomes burdened by fear, judgment, conditioning, and of course, separation. So in many ways, the consciousness of a child closely resembles the original state of the soul before it became immersed in the illusions of the world. So from an esoteric perspective, what does that mean? That the kingdom of heaven can only be entered when one returns to that original state of divine innocence. So it has been believed by many masters, teachers, sages, shamans, saints, and mystics that the divine mind and the mind of a child is one and the same. You know, many spiritual traditions have taught that this divine mind is not just a being, but an infinite field of consciousness that permeates all of existence. Isn't that very similar to how physics describes the particle, the photon? It is both particle and wave. Very similar, right? So this divine mind, this consciousness, possesses qualities that closely resemble the natural state of a young child. Why is that? Because a young child at the age of 2 or 3, before they become socially conditioned, right, through belief systems, not only do they recognize themselves as an individual consciousness, but they also see themselves as one with all living things. And I'm sure a lot of you guys don't remember that because of the heavy conditioning that we experienced at the age of 3 and 4. So, again, the divine consciousness possesses the qualities that closely resemble the natural state of a young child prior to the conditioning. Think about it. A child is naturally curious. A child is naturally present. A child always lives in wonder. A child does not know divide or endless strife. Or even judgment. It only knows what? It only knows unity. Think about that, okay? A child remains open to possibilities. A child instinctively trusts life. So before the conditioning of society took hold at the age of 3, I would say that, right? Children often perceive reality in ways that adults forgot. So the experience, the children, to give you guys an example, the children, when they observe nature or something for the first time, they are in a state of awe, okay? Like flashing, just hitting them for a brief second, okay? They become absorbed in the present moment. They could actually spend hours fascinated by something that adults would consider ordinary. So that is the difference between the mind of a child and the mind of an adult whose mind has been corrupted by the program. So this state of openness mirrors the qualities of divine consciousness. You see, guys, the infinite creator experiences creation through wonder, exploration, creativity, and endless possibilities. Okay? The infinite creator. That's how the infinite creator experiences creation, like a child. So, in this sense, the child reflects the mind of God more closely than the conditioned adult. So, as children grow, they gradually become what? Conditioned by society, right? So, it is the other way around. We are originally born with a pure consciousness, not in sin, and then we become programmed like a robot, right? They try to take away our purity. And for the most part, they succeeded, right? It just, the truth of the matter is we've all been programmed. The difference between us and the normies is that we snapped out of the program, right? Undergoing spiritual awakening, while the sleeping masses haven't. That is the difference. So the children are taught what to believe from the earliest of ages. The children are taught what is possible and impossible, right? Because before they're even taught that, the children, they see only unlimited, okay? The children are taught who they are and what they're supposed to become. And slowly, layers of programming begin to accumulate, right? As they go into school, as they go to church on Sunday. And that program begins to induce fear all of a sudden for the first time. That, of course, begins to replace the innocent trust that they were born with. And so as a result of that, more judgment becomes apparent, and that replaces curiosity. And then competition begins to replace cooperation. And then control begins to replace spontaneity. So the natural state of unity consciousness becomes obscured beneath countless layers of programming and conditioning, indoctrination, and just the list goes on. Now, many spiritual traditions described this process symbolically as humanity's departure from paradise. And as a reminder, paradise was never a location. Paradise has always been a state of consciousness. The loss of paradise represents the loss of that direct connection to the divine. So as the ego develops through the conditioning and the programming, that's why the ego develops, individuals begin identifying exclusively with their personality, their history, and their physical form. And so at that point, the awareness of their divine nature begins to fade. The childlike consciousness that once perceived life through wonder becomes buried beneath the demands and the expectations of the world. And so one of the greatest misconceptions about this teaching is the belief that becoming like a child means becoming immature. That is not true either. You see, the ancient masters were not encouraging ignorance or irresponsibility. There is a profound difference between being childish and being childlike. Being childish means reacting emotionally, refusing responsibility, and remaining immature. Being childlike means maintaining innocence while possessing wisdom. It also means retaining wonder while developing discernment. It also means remaining open-hearted without becoming naive. The enlightened masters embodied this balance perfectly. And so they did possess the wisdom of the elders, and while maintaining the innocence of a child's mentality simultaneously. They saw the world clearly without becoming cynical. They understood suffering without losing compassion. They understood darkness without abandoning love. And this is the true meaning of becoming like a child. One of the defining characteristics of a child consciousness is wonder. Children approach reality with a sense of mystery. Everything appears alive. Everything appears magical. Everything becomes worthy of exploration. The ego mind seeks certainty. The soul seeks wonder. The ego desires control. The soul desires discovery. The ego fears the unknown. The soul embraces the unknown. See how that works, guys? So when adults become trapped in these rigid beliefs and assumptions, they technically stop seeing reality as it truly is. They stop learning. They stop growing. They stop experiencing the miraculous nature of existence. So to enter the kingdom of heaven requires the recovery of that wonder, of that mystery, of that innocent state of mind, curiosity. The kingdom opens when you begin to become the student of life. And that requires being in the present moment. See, children possess another remarkable quality that we begin to lose due to the indoctrination. And that is that children live almost entirely in the present moment. For those that have a 2-year-old, a toddler, a 3-year-old, or even a 4-year-old, try to observe them and see how they're always engaged in the present moment. You see, they don't think like we do. They don't think about the past. They don't worry about the future, all right? They're in the present moment. A child playing in a field is not thinking about the next year, okay? A child watching a butterfly is not worrying about what happened yesterday. A child is fully immersed in the now. This quality of being in the present moment is fundamental to spiritual awakening. So the kingdom of heaven can only be experienced in that present moment because the past exists as a memory. The future exists as imagination. And so the eternal presence of God exists only in the now. And this is why so many spiritual traditions have emphasized mindfulness, meditation, and presence, because they are practices designed to restore the natural awareness that we possessed as children. The present moment is the doorway to the kingdom. And so another thing comes to mind besides being in the present moment, and that is trusting divine intelligence. You know, children from the beginning have a natural trust, right? Before fear becomes deeply ingrained through the indoctrination of the matrix, they move through life with openness. They trust, this trust reflects an important spiritual principle, and that is that the soul recognizes that it exists within a greater intelligence. It knows that life possesses order and meaning beyond what the natural mind can even perceive. On the other hand, the ego seeks to control everything, right? The ego fears the uncertain. The ego fears to surrender and let go. The ego fears what it cannot understand. So yet the kingdom of heaven requires what? trust. But at the same time, it doesn't require blind faith or even passive acceptance, but a deeper inner knowing that life unfolds according to higher intelligence. Trust, or let's just say this trust, allows individuals to move beyond fear and into alignment with divine flow. You see, children often perceive life through intuition rather than analysis. They feel the truth before they can even explain it. They sense energy before they can even understand concepts. So many spiritual and mystical traditions have taught that the soul functions in a similar fashion. The soul perceives reality directly. The ego interprets reality indirectly. The soul experiences unity. The ego experiences separation. The soul recognizes the sacredness of all life. The ego focuses on the differences and divisions. So as the individual progresses spiritually, they begin to learn to see through the eyes of the soul once again. The restoration of the spiritual vision, therefore, is one of the most highlights or hallmarks of entering the kingdom. The innocence spoken of by these ancient teachers is that it is purity of perception that acts as a key to enter the kingdom. It is the ability to see life without distortion. It is the freedom from bitterness, resentment, and even cynicism. So therefore, divine innocence allows people to experience reality as it truly is. It allows them to see the divine presence within themselves and others. It allows them to recognize that beneath every mask, every role, every identity exists the same sacred essence. This realization is one of the most foundational elements of the kingdom of heaven. The command to become like a child is one of the greatest spiritual teachings that was ever given and preserved through the secret knowledge. It is the invitation to recover our original nature before the indoctrination took place. It is a call to move beyond the fear, beyond the judgment, and beyond the conditioning in order to what? To return to the qualities that reflect the divine consciousness itself. The child represents innocence, wonder, trust, presence, openness, and unity. And these are the very qualities that characterize the kingdom of heaven, the new earth reality. So to enter this new earth reality is not to become less mature, it is to become spiritually whole. It is to combine the wisdom gained through life's experiences with the purity of the heart that we possessed before separation consciousness took hold. And so when we begin to recover that wonder, the wonder of the child, the trust of the child, and the presence of the child, we begin to rediscover our connection to the divine. And in that moment, the gates of the kingdom are no longer distant. They are revealed within your own consciousness, where they have always existed. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to those who remember what they were before they were taught them to forget. Now, I also want to explain this in terms of quantum physics. The physics of the kingdom of heaven has a lot to do with frequency, consciousness, and the hidden layers of reality as well. So, according to many mystical traditions, reality consists of multiple layers of existence, occupying the same space while operating at different frequencies of consciousness and energy. Just as countless radio stations can exist simultaneously within the same environment without interfering with one another, different dimensions of reality can also coexist while remaining invisible to those not attuned to it. And this is the reason why the greatest number of people don't see that the new earth has always been here, which is the original Eden, okay? The kingdom of heaven, in this view, represents one of the highest vibrational states of reality that is now accessible to all humans. Well, it was always accessible. It's just throughout history, only a selected few had access to this understanding and therefore, of course, partook in this practice to realize it. But now it is available to the masses, okay? You see, guys, the entire universe is built on vibration, okay? And even modern science has revealed that everything in the observable universe is fundamentally energy. So matter, once believed to be solid, is now understood to be composed of atoms, subatomic particles, and ultimately energy fields at the deepest layers, right? So at the deepest levels of reality, everything appears to be in constant motion. Every atom is vibrating. Every molecule is oscillating. Every electromagnetic field carries frequency. From an esoteric perspective, consciousness itself possesses vibrational qualities. Think about that. Your thoughts generate patterns. Your emotions generate frequencies. States of awareness produce energetic signatures. And so all the ancient mystery schools taught that the universe is a vast ocean of vibration, which, or rather with every level of existence corresponding to a different range of frequencies. Think about that for a second. The ancient mystery schools believe that the universe is a vast ocean of vibration, with every layer of existence corresponding to a different range of frequencies. So, in understanding this model, reality resembles a multi-dimensional spectrum of consciousness, right? Think about it for a second. To give you guys an example, the radio frequency analogy. Imagine standing in a room filled with radio signals, thousands of broadcasting signals passing through the room simultaneously. Music stations, news stations, sports stations, educational programs. And although all of these signals are occupying the same space, a radio receives only the frequency to which it is tuned. So the other broadcasts also remain invisible and inaudible until they are tuned into. That's how it works, okay? And many esoteric traditions suggest that consciousness functions in a similar manner. Human awareness itself acts as a receiver, okay? The reality that we experience depends largely upon the frequency to which your consciousness is tuned. To give you guys an example, fear tunes us to a level of experience corresponding to what the Bible calls hell, whereas love tunes you to another level of experience or frequency, which corresponds to what the holy books would consider heaven. So separation tunes you to a one reality station, right? Unity, whereas unity consciousness tunes you to a multiple layers of reality stations. It's exactly the same principle. Excuse me. So the kingdom of heaven may therefore be understood as a higher frequency band of consciousness that awaits alongside ordinary reality, but remains hidden from those whose awareness is focused elsewhere. You see, guys, one of the most fascinating concepts found in all mystical teachings is the idea that multiple dimensions occupy the same space simultaneously. So this idea appears repeatedly, right, throughout spiritual traditions. And now it's being confirmed through what? Quantum physics. The physical world is often described as only one outermost layer of a much larger reality. Plato's allegory of the cave, to give you an example, right? For those that are familiarized with Plato's allegory of the cave, it is a perfect demonstration detailing how we think that reality is what we perceive when in essence is one fraction of a larger reality spectrum that we currently cannot perceive, okay? To break it in a nutshell. Now, beyond the physical lies the energetic. Beyond the energetic lies the mental. Beyond the mental lies the what? For those that have read my book, our cosmic origin, right? There are three overall planes of existence: spiritual, mental, and physical. Think about that. So beyond the spiritual lies increasingly subtle realms of consciousness. These dimensions do not exist somewhere else. They interpenetrate one another. Just as different frequencies of light occupy the same space, different dimensions, different earth realities, right, may coexist and do coexist within the same cosmic environment. Can I get more water, please, in the same cup? Thank you. Visible light represents only a fraction of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. And I go really deep into this in my book, Our Cosmic Origin. And in like manner, ordinary human perception may also represent a small fraction of a much larger spectrum of reality. So in understanding this, the kingdom of heaven, according to the mystics, and as proven through quantum physics, exists within this greater spectrum. So consciousness is a tuning fork. It acts as a tuning mechanism to recalibrate your perception and your experience into another reality that is currently coexisting with this one, but on a different frequency. If multiple realities exist simultaneously, and they do, right? It's called superposition. How does one access them? Good question. Well, the answer given by the ancient initiates was through consciousness. You see, guys, consciousness determines perception. Perception determines experience. So as consciousness evolves, individuals become capable of perceiving aspects of reality previously hidden from awareness. And this is why many spiritual traditions place such emphasis on inner transformation. And it all begins with meditation, prayer, contemplation, compassion, forgiveness, gratitude. These principles or practices, rather, are not just moral exercises, neither. They are methods of altering consciousness itself into a higher vibration. So as consciousness becomes more coherent and harmonious, it actually begins to resonate with these higher levels of reality, which are currently existing side by side with this third dimensional level of reality. The individual gradually becomes attuned to frequencies associated with peace, unity, wisdom, and divine presence when they begin that inner transformation. And in terms of the esoteric language, of course, this is the process that we call ascension. You see how it all interrelates, my friends? The kingdom is a state of resonance, therefore a state of consciousness. And it could only be understood as a divine consciousness, which has always been here. Okay? So it's not like the new earth is a new reality that was just recently created by God. On the other way around. On the other hand, it is the other way around. It is the original sacred reality currently covered in a layer. And all we have to do is raise our frequency and to begin accessing it once again. So resonance is key, my friends, because resonance occurs when your vibrating system begins to synchronize with another. It's very similar to a tuning fork, okay? You see, a tuning fork struck at a particular frequency can actually cause another tuning fork of the same frequency to vibrate. Similarly, human consciousness can become resonant with higher states of awareness. And so the more an individual embodies love, compassion, wisdom, and truth, the more their consciousness aligns with what the mystics described as the original divine frequency. So the kingdom is not entered through physical travel either, right? It is entered through resonance. And it's not like we move into the kingdom, right? Like we move from a house to a house. We become vibrationally attuned to it, and then we begin to align with it. Okay? It's very simple, guys. This concept connects directly with the teachings of becoming like a child, because children naturally exist in a state of oneness, in a state of curiosity, wonder, and they're always present. Their consciousness has not become heavily conditioned, okay, by fear, cynicism, and rigid beliefs. As a result, children often demonstrate qualities associated with higher vibrational states because they live in the present moment, because they trust, because they forgive quickly. They remain open to possibilities. And so these qualities create resonance with what spiritual traditions identify as the kingdom of God or of heaven. The childlike state is therefore not something to think of as a metaphor or a symbol. It actually represents a frequency of consciousness naturally aligned with that higher reality, which has always been here. You see, guys, many traditions, they all talked about this veil, right? This veil that has been separating humanity from the higher realms. Well, the esoteric tradition believed that this veil may be understood as a difference in vibration. The veil is not just a physical barrier. It never was a physical barrier. It is a perceptual barrier. It is a perceptual barrier. Just as the human eye cannot perceive ultraviolet or infrared light without specialized instruments, ordinary consciousness cannot perceive higher dimensions without spiritual development. That's how it works. The kingdom has always been here. The kingdom remains present. The divine remains present. Higher realities remain present. What changes is the capacity of consciousness to perceive them. As awareness expands, the veil becomes increasingly transparent. And so many spiritual traditions have described humanity's evolution as a collective shift in consciousness. And that it is what will be materializing and manifesting the kingdom on earth. Okay? As more individuals begin to embody compassion, unity, wisdom, and love, the collective frequency of humanity gradually rises. And so this transformation does not require humanity to leave the earth. Instead, it involves perceiving reality from a higher state of awareness. The kingdom begins within the individual and eventually radiates outward into society. As enough people begin to embody this higher consciousness, the qualities of the kingdom become increasingly visible in the world in itself. Peace begins to replace conflict. Cooperation begins to replace competition, on a collective, that is, right? And of course, unity replaces division. Wisdom replaces fear. The kingdom ceases to be an inner experience and becomes a lived reality. So in conclusion, the esoteric teachings of the kingdom of heaven suggest that reality is far greater than what is perceived through the physical senses alone. And just like stations broadcasting across a vast cosmic spectrum, multiple layers of existence actually occupy the same space while remaining invisible to one another because of differences in frequency and consciousness. The kingdom of heaven is not separated from humanity by distance. It is separated by resonance. It is a state of higher consciousness. Okay? And so in order to enter it, all we have to do is remember. It is to refine your consciousness until it becomes aligned with the frequencies of the divine reality. And in this understanding, heaven is not a destination waiting beyond death either. Okay, it is a higher octave of existence already present within you and all around you, awaiting recognition. The kingdom of heaven is not anywhere. It is a dimension of consciousness hidden within the very fabric of reality itself. And that is just the truth of the matter. I do want to welcome all 2,500 people that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. Before I open it up for Q&A, I wanted to remind you guys that I have a whole new set of courses, and they do book pretty quick. So I have 3 different level ascension courses. I take this information and I go much deeper with practical methods and techniques that I teach you guys as to how to be realize through that inner transformation, how to become multidimensional, which is the true meaning of ascension, and how to begin embodying the kingdom of heaven through information and techniques. So 3 level ascension courses for only $100 each. You could access them through my website, ourcosmicorigin.com. All right, so before I give some shout outs, I do want to acknowledge a few of you that are present. Christopher Brennan is in the house. Hayes 1002 is in the house. Sheila Marie is in the house. Elise Starr is in the house. Karina Lance is in the house. Carrie Channel is in the house. William Ryan. Sassy Freebird is in the house. And I'm going to shout out to one more person. Let's see, who is going to be that last person? Frosted Fluke is in the house. What a name, Frosted Fluke. Thank you guys so much for being here once again. Alrighty, so Q&A time. Please type your questions in capital letters so that I can bypass the chat. You guys like my new shirt? Yeah, it's very patriotic. The American flag with the camo for the representing the U.S. military. And no, I've never served in the military, but I do believe in the concepts of freedom. So I do support the Republic, of course. All right, first question. Holy ship with an IP at the end. Thank you so much for the super chat. Will all loving people with 12D higher selves ascend to 5D in first wave? If they come from the 12D, they're going to be reintegrating back to the 12D and every reality in between into the physical, into the now, okay? Second part of your question. Join with their oversoul instead of just joining with the higher self. Yes, the people that come from the 12D, some of you guys did volunteer from the 12D, you will be here fully embodying the oversoul while maintaining physical form. The only difference is that your body will become immortalized. You will never age and you'll never grow old. Good question. Kenneth Brown, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what dimension was the Star Wars timeline in, and how long was it going for? That happened in dimensions 4, 5, and 6, which are pretty physical, but not as dense as this one. Except 6. 6 is not as physical, you could say, but it's still kind of physical. All right, next part of your question is, In the movie Mandalorian, movie had mentioned Shakri Moon. Was it real life line? I don't know what that means, brother. I'm sorry. I do want to acknowledge Valentina Sunshine. Thank you so much, sister. I appreciate the super chat. I thought I saw you on the chat, so you changed your name. It used to say Valentina 1977. Now it's something else. All right, welcome, sister. Yes, if you guys found this presentation extremely vital, please watch this from the beginning. Ishmael, in addition to the childlikeness, I feel a new puberty and SEX relation will replace the XEX misery since the fall. Uh, I don't know what you mean by that, but SEX still exists in the 50. All right. You know, part of the false indoctrination is they made SEX, they made us believe that intercourse, right, making love to our partner was an evil thing, right, prior to marriage. But the truth of the matter is that is a way to access higher consciousness if done correctly and, of course, with the right partner. So, you know, there's this thing called tantric yoga, which is what they call SEX magic, right? So, SEX is not a bad thing. It was just painted that way by religion. SEX is another tool for spiritual ascension, okay? All right, more questions. Valentina, thanks so much, sister, for your second super chat. That was the other sunshine. It was not me. I am still 1973 or 77. Sorry, 77. All right, thank you for the correction, sister. Appreciate that. I guess I have two sunshines in the chat. Welcome both. What dimension is the I am presence in? The I am presence, which is God consciousness, is in every dimension. We just have to recalibrate through resonance and retune our fork, right? As a metaphor, retune our frequency. Oh, I can't see my books like that. There we go. Now you can see my books. What is an earth angel? All of you are. If you are an old soul, if you are a star seed in embodiment, you are an earth angel. That's right. We are our own temple. That is right. Thank you for stating that, sister. So technically, do star seeds leave homes for a while to heal, remember and get superpowers, and then come back to help others ascend? Or do they go back where they came from? Good question. No, star seeds are here to establish heaven on earth, to bring back that frequency through what? Remembrance and then embodiment. And then that's how we access our superpowers. Good question. So Wade Woodruff, um, Wolf Mother, and Starcadian, all three have the wrench. It's getting hot in here. Can you please turn on the fan or the air? Thank you. It's almost 100 degrees here in Arizona now. Summer is here, definitely. Thank you. Cheeky Yankee, thank you so much for the super chat. Were Adam and Eve real humans? Well, they were spiritual humans, multi-dimensional beings. And was Eden supposed to be the true template for Earth? Well, it is the original divine template that was part of the original divine creation, but that was hijacked several times throughout the different epochs and ages. In most recent times, the Anunnaki Enki was the one who dropped us from that original Eden. And by the way, guys, the entire Old Testament is a metaphor. Enki was the snake in the Bible. Enki was the one who deceived Eve. Enki was the one who, through his shenanigans, dropped the spiritual Adam into a mortal Adam. So it was because of Enki. I wanted to thank Karen Stanton for her donation. Thanks so much, sister. I heard that these data centers are going to program humanity's subconscious. Well, again, that's not happening on the ascending positive timeline. Okay, so right now, all of these realities, the negative ones and the positive ones, are all coexisting. But very soon, they're going to go their own way. So depending on your fork pitch, right, the frequency that you are embodying, that will determine which timeline you end up in when the trifurcation takes place. Yes, there will be a middle timeline. Tri, not bi. So when this reality separation takes place, those data centers are not going to exist in the new Earth reality. Thank you. Ishmael, did you receive my letter with enclosed? Yes, I did. Thank you so much, Karen Hess. I appreciate that. And I do read all the letters and all the cards. Thank you guys so much. And for those that do not know my mailing address, it is 1771 West State Route 89A, Suite B, box number 3015, Sedona, Arizona 86336. 86336. That is my mailing address. And I do want to thank those that are mailing me letters and cards. I receive them all. For those that are, sending me gifts, donations, I appreciate all of that. Thank you guys so much. All right, another super chat from Andres. He says, I want to know if our loved ones who have passed will be able to interact with us. And yes, they will. And you will be able to hug them. Absolutely. Orvion, thank you so much, brother. So basically what you said, brother, everyone has to go through the Kundalini rising or the alchemical wedding where spirit and Christ become one. That's another way of explaining it. Yep, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And Valentina Sunshine, thank you so much. Oh, that was earlier. She was saying that's the other sunshine. Thank you, Zeroth, for your super chat. Do ascending humans disappear in 3D, 4D timeline? yes, they do, but then they're also able to reappear at will. As they pop in from the fifth dimensional reality or above, they're able to once again come into the 4D reality. Now, the 3D reality is just going to be purged. All right. We still have to have a 3D reality that connects us to the 2D and the 1D. All right. This is all part of integrating heaven and earth, physicality with spirituality. So it's not like the 3D is not going to be here. See, the 3D has always been here. The only difference was when we were spiritual multidimensional being during the era of Atlantis, we were operating on different realities. So we were still physical, right? Our consciousness was operating from the fifth or above. It was when we fell from the higher frequencies into the 3D that our entire reality spectrum was, of course, it narrowed down into just one small bandwidth of reality. So that's always been here, okay? There's nothing wrong with 3D reality. It's just this 3D reality, it is the lowest state of light energy vibrating at its lowest frequency. So that is the difference. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Orvion, for your super chat. Any news on the Discord channel, brother, or have you not looked into it? Not yet. I've been super busy, but I heard 3D is the perfect school, that when all humans have moved up, another blueprint will be becoming here in our spot. Well, yes, but that's only going to take place on a different Earth reality, not on this Earth. Earth is going to be, pretty much fully intact in all 15 dimensions. And I know you've taken my cosmic origin class, so you know what I mean regarding Earth existing in all 15 dimensions. Ishmael, what do you think will happen for all the people who aren't aware at all or are someone who thinks that these are just New Age lies? Will they think everything is crumbling apart during ascension? Well, the reality, the truth is going to hit them right in the face when their consciousness becomes open. That's only if they allow themselves to rise in consciousness. So it all depends on the individual. Some people are not going to be able to rise in consciousness, so they're going to have severe cognitive dissonance. And then some people are going to be able to rise in consciousness. So all of this will depend on the individual. And when you think of the term New Age, well, a synonym for New Age is New Aeon. New Aeon is a new world, a new world. That's what it is. It's a new epoch. So there are different ways of describing a New Age, okay?